Got to bring the microphone down here a little bit. So we are Signagelive. We're a digital signage software company headquartered out of the UK with offices in the Chicago area and in Singapore. We run tens of thousands of screens globally, and we are really known for kind of being leaders in system on chip and HTML5 based content distribution and applications. So this has been really interesting. We've been going through a lot of presentations today, tomorrow, some about use cases for my good friends and the folks at Bank of America, talking about theirs specifically. But what we like to do in these kinds of environments is just kind of unpack what signage kind of is, because a lot of people are first timers that come to the show. We try to really demystify what this application does and how it can be used kind of in the field, right? Because there's a lot of solutions in the space and it seems super, super complex, but in the reality over the last couple of years, and specifically with the Chrome platform, it's become incredibly easy, incredibly inexpensive, and very, very powerful for kind of the money that you spend. So we say that we make smart technology brilliant, so we had to go in there. A little tagline with a little hat tip to my colleagues in the UK, right? So we like to think ourselves as the cloud digital signage platform for the smart technology revolution. That's a lot of words. That essentially means the signage market, if you're here a couple years ago, mostly about big PCs, computers, server technologies. We're focusing on cloud and mobile and internet technologies, and we really try to be the bit in the middle that allows people to get applications in the system, monitor those things, and really kind of be ready for the next wave of this kind of IoT revolution that we're starting to see, okay? So, Signagelive by the numbers, we're operated in 39 different countries. We've got 1,458 resellers, which probably isn't updated yet, because it happens, we sign contracts basically every couple of days, so it's probably a little bit higher than there. So those are the networks, then we have the resellers. We're available in 14 different languages, and we have those 3 offices that I mentioned before. So what is it that we do? In broad terms, we do essentially 4 things. We schedule, okay? And a lot of people do scheduling, which is organizing content into playlists, getting images and videos and web things right into a playlist and sending it out, sometimes programmatically, sometimes utilizing metadata, okay? We manage. We've got an unlimited number of users that can manage the system with various levels of access. They can go all the way down from being an administrative kind of role, all the way down to managing individual templates, or kind of talking about the entire network. Reporting, right? Are the screens on? Is the media player actually playing its content? How many times has it checked in? There are trend analysis that people are really interested in, right? About things like temperature and brightness of screens and all those different types of things. Gentlemen, and interaction is where we're really starting to go. So we're going to go into this in a couple more slides, but we really think that the kind of future is not just videos in a loop and things like that, but it's actual contextual signage, right? Who is in an environment and how does that impact what's going up on the screen? Things like that. No, and I'll touch on that in just a little while. All right, but most importantly, right, the CDM, this underlying management console within the Chrome platform, is really there to put a layer of management into devices that normally are not available with a typical CMS platform, right? So the ability to kind of pre-install a Signagelive application, automatically launch if things kind of go down, so from a management perspective. Monitor the lower level kind of hardware device management is really what the CDM is being used for most of our customers. And this idea of doing configuration of Wi-Fi networks and networking before it gets shipped saves people money, right? And that's incredibly important. We do all live chat kind of technical support for our customers, and most of the things that people complain about is that I did thing on the content and the content's not working. Well, if you looked at the dashboard, you can see the thing's not connecting, right? And you can do those things, use the CDM to actually reboot players, manage the network connectivity, things like that. So that's where we think that's incredibly useful. All right, so fundamentally, signage is about media, right? Organizing things like audio files, video files, images, web pages, things like that, getting it up into the system and sending it out. But it's more in depth than that. You have to really be use a lot of intelligence, I apologize, about what is the thing, right? So we try to get in as much metadata about an individual asset as possible before we kind of distribute that down, because we can say only play on players that match Spanish language. Only play on players that match certain demographic information, things like that. So that's why metadata is incredibly important. And metadata, this concept of metadata, is actually something that's brought in from the web world. So we talk a lot about how web and mobile and signage are actually converging. Okay, make sense to everybody? And feel free to interrupt. This is a presentation, but if anybody has any questions as we go forward, I don't mind stopping. It's no big deal. So if you have any questions, just let me know, okay? So creating layouts, people like to do this. They like to have live TV in a section and create one section over here and a ticker on the bottom. That's just part of the organization, right? So uploading media is kind of the first kind of concept, and getting that media organized in the playlist and putting in a multi-zone layout out up on the screen, that's one of the capabilities that we provide. It's not for every case, right? It's not for menu boards. It won't be used for things like a wayfinding application. That's going to be a full screen. But for things like corporate communications, people do tend to like the idea and the concept of layouts. Okay. Scheduling, obviously, you can't have media in there if you're not going to actually publish it out. So that's when we start to look at some intelligence within there. In the beginning, signage was just a loop, right? And frankly, you've got a lot of signage that's out there that's still just an SD card in a box. And we like to call those sneakernet. Has anybody heard that term? All right, sneakernet, where you just actually put on your sneakers and you run around, and this guy knows what I'm talking about. You can bring the beer back over here, bud. So those are literally people sending out SD cards every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and the expense of that is just insane, right? So the ability to actually publish this stuff out is really what this network and this show is really all about, okay? Which is the idea of publishing, right? Select a playlist, select a layout, publish it out once. Well, we have the concept of just publishing once. So you publish this kind of group of playlists, and you have the ability to update it kind of after the fact, right? So we have our media player technology. You can have check-ins and health checks. So content checks and health checks. Health check says, hey, everything's working out just fine. The temperature is this, the screenshot is this, those different types of things. So just a little amount of data. The content check says, if I check for content and there is new content, i.e. that playlist has actually been updated, I'm going to go ahead and download that content. So sometimes retailers only want to do that at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes people want to do it every 5 minutes, 10 minutes. All that's configurable. Okay? Reporting. This is really where the power of our platform and the power of the CDM license kind of come together. Because there's that CDM layer of that hardware management that we were mentioning before, and there's also kind of network information that we report on. We report on users that log into systems and the things that they do. For a compliance perspective, you want to know if a picture of a cat is running on your big screen as opposed to the dashboard information, right? Did Susie put that on or did Bob put that on, right? So we can audit all those different things. And we can audit the actual information of what's playing on the screen as well. All the times the asset played, if there's conditional playback, why something played, the reasons that something played, okay? And we're implementing things like screenshots, which are incredibly important. So for the highest end kind of network operators, things like screenshots and live showing of what's actually going on the screen has kind of been around for a while, but the costs have been extraordinary, right? Because it was a really unique thing, a couple of years ago. And now it's come down to almost the commodity level. So it's an expectation that when networks are deployed, that things like screenshots are available. Make sense? Okay. All right, so manage. Like I said before, we have an unlimited number of users within the system. We do that because, frankly, it shouldn't cost more for more than one person to manage a digital signage network. We're 100% in the cloud. It's not like we want to charge somebody and nickel and dime them for every time that somebody wants to get in the system. We want to be able to make this product and make this industry and this technology more accessible. That's how it grows, right? That's how we grow as an industry, to open it up and to make it more accessible to more people, okay? There's various layers of users. There's the technical people over here. You can have somebody that's working to just update one template if you want to, and all the layers in between, review only, things like that, okay? Monitor. So this is where it starts to get into that kind of almost IT play. right? The digital signage market has been a lot about traditional kind of pro AV channels. The guys that own the relationships and know how to put up the projectors have gone into larger screen kind of deals in the professional pro AV groups. We're seeing that the IT channel is starting to really participate in the signage network, okay? And they want to be able to monitor everything within the system, okay? So we've come up with an HTML5 dashboard that somebody can bring in. It's got reds and greens and yellows. It monitors things like temperature and brightness and is the content down and things like that. And we're creating an entire API around this because people may not necessarily want to log into our dashboard. Because if they're monitoring things like screens and media players, and they're also doing things like, I don't know, monitoring people's mobile phones, and that comes into a centralized dashboard, a centralized database, why do they need to log into what we're doing? We provide the tools and the pipes to be able to log into our API. Okay? Everybody's comfortable with the concept of APIs? Okay, great. This is where it starts to get really interesting. So, how do I explain this a little bit easier? The biggest challenge that the signage network has these days is not media player technology or content management systems, right? There's enough of us in this space where someone can find a solution. The biggest challenge that holds back the industry a lot of times is content, right? And it's creating video files and image files that cost a lot of money, right? What we've found is with the advent of the Chrome platform in particular, you can run pretty much any HTML5 experience that you do on a web page or on a mobile application within Chrome. So what we said is, we're going to take this idea of creating an HTML5 framework. We call it it's called the W3C widget specification that's been around since 2008 to allow HTML5 applications to essentially be created, zipped up, their entire libraries and videos and images and things like that, distributed down to the Chrome platform, unzipped, and are able to run offline. So the only time that you need internet connectivity is if the application needs to be updated, right? Or if the data within the application needs to be updated. But it'll run offline. So for things like menu boards or building directories or even KPIs and dashboards and things like that, right? There are companies out there that do that for a living. They've got really, really interesting content, and they come from like there's a company called like Gecko Board, for example, that's based out in the UK, and they just do dashboards for a living. And it's awesome, the stuff that they do. A company called Grow, that's based out of Utah. They know that their stuff has value on a large screen, a screen like this, but they don't really know it as digital signage, which is, I think, really an interesting opportunity. Because these folks are creating this amazing stuff with an HTML5, and all we're trying to do is enable that technology to get to here, as opposed to kind of prevent it. So instead of making people kind of build tools within our platform, we're saying, hey man, just do your thing. Just do standard HTML5 development. All you've got to do is these two little tweaks to be able to zip up that whole thing and be able to install it and run it offline. We find like this is what's going to grow, right? This idea of engaging web development communities and the mobile community is what's going to make this industry really grow. That makes sense to everybody? Okay. Go ahead, please.
How do you protect the HTML5 in order to avoid that one customer copy the widgets of the other?
That's a really interesting question. So the question was, how do you protect the HTML5 widget so it doesn't get copied, right? Because you can copy somebody's website by view source and then take down the whole thing. Well, all of our customers have their own segregated network. No one shares this data back and forth. Even though it goes in the same cloud and we've got 1,500 networks, it's completely isolated from one to another. So if you upload any content that you have, HTML5 website, inside of your network, it lives there, right? No one can touch it, nobody's gonna copy it. The only people that have access is you and our technical support people. That's it. That's how we have the protection. Make sense? Okay. And if you have any questions, additional questions, please feel free. Okay. So widgets are incredibly powerful. So I'm just going to wrap up here. Incredibly powerful. It's going to change the way that people design content for this space, and it will probably affect a lot of people's business models as well. It's going to have a serious impact because it's pretty easy to make a website these days, right? You know, it doesn't cost $15,000 to make a website. It costs like $50. So that's how things are going to change pretty dramatically, okay? So, interaction. This is another way that we've tried to extend the Chrome platform and our kind of platform in general to be able to incorporate more and more of the web community. So we've installed, we basically adopted this whole idea of a web-based triggering for content, okay? So the ability to say, I'm gonna take a signal, a WebSocket signal, I'm gonna pass it through an API that we've developed, and I wanna affect content that's up on the screen. Okay, so for some of the use cases that we have, is one of the big ones for education and for medical verticals are emergency messaging, obviously, right? So we want to be able to take a signal from wherever. It could be, you know, a mobile phone to be able to somebody hit a panic button in an education environment. It could be a weather source. It could be something that is a smart building environment where they say, okay, there's a fire over here, so this screen says don't go down this way. This screen says, hey, come this way. So those are the kinds of things that are available if you think about emergency messaging. Another one that we talk about a lot, which is where you see here, is tying into the kind of Chrome Eddystone beacon environment and be able to whip out your phone and say, I want to control the content that's up on the screen. I'm within 5 feet. You get within 5 feet, you pull out your phone, it says you have the ability to control the content, and an individual consumer can walk up and say, I want to look at more of these shoes. So this doesn't become a very expensive touch overlay on top of the screen where somebody hits the button and it gets a little laggy because you know touchscreen technology is a little bit challenging. They can bring out their own phone, right, and start interacting with it. Because the reality is the touchscreen in your pocket, right, is always going to be the best touchscreen on the market. That's the way that it is, right? It's always refreshed, it's always new. I don't have the one with the cool ones with the edges, but you know that kind of stuff comes out. So your touchscreen in your pocket is always going to be the best touchscreen in the industry, which that's the way that it is. And by embracing this idea of WebSocket, web-triggered interactivity, we're trying to get this idea of interactivity out into the masses. Because candidly, we're a cloud-based software company. We don't sell hardware, right? We don't sell content services. The only way that we make money is networks. So what we're trying to do is bring technology that lives in New York or Vegas or these really places that spend tons and tons of money, and we're trying to bring it to places like Des Moines, right? Let's bring it out to the masses. And we can do it with a Chromebox and a level of interactivity on the cloud, okay? Okay, analytics, right? This is incredibly important as well. So if I have, for a use case, somebody in an auto shop wants to talk about technology, so they've got a screen above a car, they don't really know a thing about a car. Has anybody shopped for cars lately? They really don't know what they're talking about. It's amazing. Like they just kind of go in there and they figure if you get in the car, they're gonna sell the car. So they don't really care about the features and the drivetrain and tires, they just want to get you in the car, right? The problem is that the guys that want to get you in the car don't know how to actually upsell things like technology. They have no idea. So if you walked into a Cadillac dealer, right, and you start asking questions about OnStar, they have no idea, right? So a concept here is there's a tablet, and they start interviewing whoever is interested about that technology. They take you over to the OnStar station, okay? They start asking you questions. Oh, you're really interested in this feature? Ask a couple questions, hit a button, goes up on the screen. So can we record the person that is in there, the ways that they're interacting, this whole question and answer, the videos that they watch, track that back to the sale, right? And you have this level of analytics that really didn't exist before. And you're actually providing the tools for the salesperson to be more successful. Right? But we can also strip it down to just the amount of times the videos are played for compliance, for things like advertising networks, but it also goes into users and things like that I'd mentioned previously. Okay? And that's us in a nutshell. I mean, half an hour is not a lot of time. I wanted to be able to take time for kind of question and answer. So if anybody has any questions about what we do, the Chrome platform, I'm here to answer them. If no one has any questions, I'll say thanks for listening.
Using beacon as a trigger with a cell phone, you actually don't even need a touch display.
So great question. So the question is, if you're using a phone with a beacon to interact with the screen, do you need a touchscreen? And the answer is no. And that's where we think the power is. That's where we think that we can dramatically reduce cost of these really cool interactive solutions for the market in general. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's also on that channel, but do users have to download their own app to interact on their phone?
So the question is, do users have to actually download their own application to interact with the screen? And the answer is provided by Google, and the answer is no, right? Because it's Eddystone, right? So the whole Eddystone environment means that folks that have a Chrome browser within their mobile phones, they're stripping away that application layer and allowing people to interact with it directly. So you've got a mobile experience because we all have internet connectivity on our phones, and it allows you to be able to interact with that screen. Sure.
Do you have any kind of integration with Google devices management or with Google spreadsheets or with Google native documents?
Absolutely. So the question is about levels of integration with Google's ecosystem, right? Devices over here, and then spreadsheets and slides and things like that over here. The answer to the devices is basically yes, right? So anything that runs Chrome can run Signage Live, including a browser. So we don't do that for like commercial purposes, but just for people to play around with it. If you go to Chrome store, search for Signage Live, you can start running our application within the browser, okay? Yeah, yep, exactly. But you use the CDM for commercial purposes to be able to automatically distribute that application out. So from a hardware perspective, absolutely yes. From the software perspective, we work with content partners for integration for things like spreadsheets. Right behind you, a gentleman named Henrik has a company called Ask Cody that they do wayfinding and room booking information centered around the Google platform, right? So we're the part in the middle that does distribution of content and assets and management of those devices. And we try to say, look, we're creating APIs, we're embracing open web technologies, because a lot of the innovation that's happening in this space is more about the content people, right? Than it is necessarily about the panel manufacturers or even the CMS guys. All we're trying to do is we're going to say, we're embracing this idea of open technology, web technology, HTML5, and we're engaging the mobile and web development community. Because, those guys don't really want to do device management. They don't really, right? I see some head shakes, right? What's the point of that? And we don't want to do content development, right? Or application development. We say a lot that our developers don't make apps, we make APIs, right? Make it easy for everybody to engage. Lower that kind of barrier of entry. Any additional questions? Anybody? Sure.
Last question.
Yeah, that's where I'm.
Did you try your software working on the new Chromebit?
Oh, okay. So the question is, and this is a funny story, did we try the software on the new Chromebit, right? And so, yes, the answer to that is yes. We've got partners that have tried it, but the development team in the UK have tried it, and unfortunately, as the CMO, I tried it too, and I fried mine within about 3 days. No idea how I did it. I could quite literally break all technology. I don't know how I do it, but don't let your CMO do device testing. That's the lesson. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.